Umesh Shrikhande, who worked in contract throughout 90s. He returned to contract in 2005 and was a CEO till 2012. Since 2013, Umesh has been the CEO of Taproot, Dentsu. May I request Umesh?
Good evening, everyone. The 90s were magical years for contract, but decoding that magic and putting one's finger on how Ram must have done it has always been a tricky proposition. Essentially because letting one in on his own philosophy or principles was not like him. For all contracts achievements, Ram's operating style was motivated not by some heavy-sounding principles, but rather by simple, human, intuitive things that look and sound very easy but are difficult to live up to. Now when I look back, it seems that coming from HTA with all the baggage that he must have come with to a new fledgling agency, he seemed to have decided early on that 3 pillars are most crucial for an agency. 1, an enabling culture. 2, its ability to encourage maverick thinking. And 3rd, create a bunch of highly energized, young and happy people. And he seemed to have perhaps said to himself that if I did these 3 things right, the rest will take care of himself. And that to me is the best I can do to decode what must have gone on in his head and what seemed to be the beliefs that fired all the actions that he took and what he did. His first belief seemed to be to hire and work with good people, but more importantly, believe in them 100%. Whether it was Sayyid Imam, Ishan Raina, Ravi Deshpande, and many, many other talented stalwarts whom he chose made a big difference. Having hired them, he had the ability to leave you frightfully alone. And when I say frightfully alone, he actually sort of detached himself from you and expected you to realize what your mandate was and decide what your responsibilities are and decide what benchmarks you want to set and perform. Which was scary in its own way, but he did it with a great amount of respect. And he also realized that to foster that culture, he needed a culture that was non-political, non-intimidating, and free-thinking. Almost saying to all of us that you focus on the work and I'll focus on you. And that seems to be his hallmark. It was common to see him plonking himself on the tables of some of our colleagues, more so in the creative department, and regaling young writers with all sorts of anecdotes and energizing them. If he went out for a dinner and he ordered a cigar, then you would know that many, many stories are going to come your way. And he had a whole treasure chest full of them because he traveled a lot. And every time he came back from a trip, there was 1 or 2 big stories. I often felt that he added a dose of liberal imagination to them. But nevertheless, so he would come back and say how he lost his baggage and how he prevailed on the airline to overcompensate him. And they gave him a bag and they gave him a suit and they gave him his shoes and they paid him something. At the end of the story, we felt that, it's time we all lost our baggage and kind of... The next thing, and I allude to what Ashish said about his years in Pondicherry, I suspect that didn't, but we all talk about going with the flow. And he was a master of that. I'll just give you one example. A couple of years we did well, and he took 40 of us to Africa. And with due respect for the system and for the finance guys, you have to have a conference attached to such trips, right? It can't be a picnic. So we went to Africa, and the first day was the conference, and the bunch that he was presiding over were all late 20s, early 30s. Going to exotic locations and discussing work is the last thing that they want. So after the first 20 minutes, there were a couple of guys who found the courage to say, can we cut this down to half a day? Can we do this in 2 hours? And so on and so forth. It took him no more than 10-15 minutes to get a sense of what was going on. And he said, all right, we'll do this conference back in Bombay, go and have fun. So this was his hallmark, and this is what he did effortlessly and did it all the time. The second thing that I found amazing about him, that he just firmly believed that no post-mortem ever. No looking back, look ahead, look at the future. There was a case where we had a client in Bangalore, and a biggish client, and contract was relatively small then, so revenue mattered. And there was some disagreement with that client, and I went with him for the final meeting, as it were, and it was decided that we will part ways. We walk out of the meeting, he turns to me and says, we'll get another account. And that's it. That was the end of the discussion. I think it came from his faith in people, because he said that I've hired good people. I think they'll learn from their mistakes. I don't have to rub it in and make them feel small. Maybe that's where it came from. But it was an incredible ability to look ahead and never ever look back. Throughout that time, Ram was at the helm. He was a full 20 years older than the average age of the team, which was then in their late 20s and early 30s. But he successfully managed to put all of us youngsters to shame by being supremely energetic and relentlessly positive at all times. For instance, if there was an offsite scheduled to start at, say, 8:30, most of us would find it staggeringly tough to be there on time. But Ram would be always there on the dot, typically wearing a bright colored t-shirt, done with his treadmill routine and his breakfast, and all ready to spank us for being late. Once I asked him about the secret of this energy and his equanimity, and all he said was, no matter how late it gets, I never sleep without my meditation. And maybe that answer kind of told me where his intuitive beliefs came from. So, on that meditative note, I'd like to thank Theresia for asking me to speak about a man who presided over an agency that we all admired and grew with, an agency that confirmed our belief in the good work that we do, an agency that taught me to do business in a principled way. So more strength and more power to you, Ram, and good wishes to your family. More strength to the many wonderful people who joined him on this journey too. Thank you very much.